Welcome to the Inspiring Change podcast. My name is Elvin Martinez Jr. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Engagement at Bays. And today we'll be talking with Shauna Kelly, who's our Assistant Director of Community-Based Services. Welcome to Inspiring Change, Shauna.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Shauna, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your professional career?
Yeah, of course. So I like to say I got my start in child welfare. So when I graduated college at the University of Tampa, I then went into the dependency system. Well, not myself, but as a worker, as a case manager. So I worked with at-risk families who were experiencing some type of hardship. So they were in touch with the investigation where there was abuse or neglect or abandonment of some sort. And then I worked with them in case management to help them get reunified or get those youth adopted into more permanent options. From there, I grew into supervisory roles, and I was in child welfare for about 6-ish years. And then I moved on to work with a housing first population, some people who are experiencing homelessness, so same population, at-risk families. So those, we would work with the school systems to identify any families experiencing hardship and jeopardy of losing housing. So the housing first model really talks about you can't really work through any of your other mental health issues or crises until you have needs met. And so we were trying to ensure that all families in the community had access to housing. And then from there, I came over here to Bays. And so we are, again, working with at-risk youth and families in the community, servicing them through mental health services, juvenile services. So happy to be here.
And University of Tampa Spartan?
Yes.
So did you grow up in Tampa?
No, I actually grew up in Connecticut.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And you decided to go to UT?
Yeah, so funny, my dad actually went to UT when he was going through college. And so I have two older sisters, and he made us all apply because it was just like you had to do that as part of the rules.
Part of the process?
Yeah. So then I got in and I was like, well, why not go to Florida for 4 years? And then I never left.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, my dad went to University of Tampa, and one of my sisters also went to University of Tampa.
It's a good school.
Yeah,
it's beautiful now. It's gotten like so much bigger,
yeah.
And it is not what it was when I went there, but it's a great school.
Yeah, and the campus on the Hillsborough River is pretty cool too.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So, how did you make the decision? Because it sounds like you're really pretty drawn to helping people.
Yeah.
And to work specifically with children and families that may be struggling to meet their basic needs. So what has kind of driven you or attracted you to work in this field?
I often say you'll talk to anyone who's in the field, that you're touched in some way throughout your life that makes you want to then go into a helping profession. So definitely had those experiences growing up. And then it's funny because if you asked me in college if I wanted to work with youth and families, I would not have said yes to that. But I studied criminology and psychology. And my dad actually is up in Connecticut. They call him parole officer, so more like probation here in Florida. So I've always been around us being connected to people in need and servicing them. So even like we would say like my dad had rehabilitated somebody and like years down the line, we would stay connected to them and they'd help out around the house and so very familiar for us to be like in a helping state. So I think that naturally just kind of stuck in my head to always be open to human change and humans and just curiosity about them. And then, so I went through school, and then when I graduated, I was like, okay, I need a job. And so I just applied to anything that was kind of related to criminology or servicing humans. And I got the interview for child welfare, and I went home from the interview and I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to work with people like going into care. Like that sounds so sad. And then I gave it a chance and I fell in love with it because I really love the idea that people can change and we can be support them in that and help them. If people go through hardships and it doesn't identify like that they are this way of a person, and that they can always make a new decision for their life. So being a catalyst in that really, it just sparked something in me that I never wanted to let go of.
And really those success stories or seeing somebody get an opportunity or change their life in a positive way.
Yeah.
despite all the kind of setbacks and frustrations along the way, it's every time that happens, how rewarding is that as a professional?
Oh yeah, it just feels so good. You just get so excited for them because you can see like just even like a small moment, even like what I can predict is like this is going to make you live your best, most optimal life. It's not what I think, it's what actually is going to benefit that person and like their own perspective of it. And so even if that means that somebody, just leaves a unhealthy relationship, or they make a healthy choice for their child, or they make a healthy choice for themselves, it's empowering.
And oftentimes it's just incremental stuff, right? Like sometimes we think, or I think just that we have to accomplish like all the goals at one time.
Yeah.
But really it's those little minor kind of changes over time that add up.
It's can you build a skill? Not can you turn your whole entire life around?
Right.
Because it's what you do every day is what's going to create the biggest outcome of how you then lead your life.
And then one more question about your background. It's really cold in Connecticut, right?
It's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the weather in Florida is better?
Well, yeah. So I was like, why am I going to leave? Because it's nice here. And I like to call myself a sun worshiper. So I am very much a complicated houseplant where like I need to be watered and sunned on a regular basis. And I love Connecticut. I love growing up there, but why have to suffer with the cold
right.
if I don't have to? So yeah, we're here.
And now we're ready for the summertime heat. So
yeah, not so much loving that part of it all the time, but that's why air conditioning exists.
Absolutely. So Mental Health Awareness Month in May.
Yeah, it's big.
That is a big thing. And why is it important that we raise awareness around mental health and encouraging people to address mental health concerns if maybe they have some or are suffering in some way?
Yeah.
Or to even take care of their mental well-being? Why is that an important thing that we should all be concerned about?
So mental health really touches 1 in 5 humans. So like think about, you just walk into an office, at least 1 in 5 people are going to be experiencing some type of mental health, mental illness, mental impairment of some degree. And that doesn't mean that they have a debilitating diagnosis. It just means that maybe they need to enhance their mental well-being. So mental well-being is just about how are you functioning as a person overall in your physical health, your mental health, your just in a holistic approach. And it's so important to advocate and build awareness to it, because we like to think that we are maybe immune to difficulties sometime, or like it doesn't affect us in some way, or we like have this strong ability, like we're in the servicing industry and like, well, I'm aware of what mental health means, so I'm not going to then get impacted by it. But that's us intellectualizing what's happening to us.
A chip in the armor,
yes,
so to speak, right?
Yeah, but we experience anxieties, we experience stressors. And that's just like a natural part of being a human, is to move through these types of things. But when the emotions get stuck, that's when the mental illness really kind of takes a bigger toll and has control over us. So it's allowing you to remain as in control as possible of your life. And so building awareness about skills you can have, ways to cope, who you can contact for support if things become feel like they're getting out of control, where it's too much for you to handle, ways that you can continue to educate yourself. So psychoeducation is what we call it. It's very important, because the more that you know how to take care of yourself, the more you'll be able and willing to do it for yourself. So that's like mental health awareness is like us really just having as much resources in your face to like help you feel empowered about your choices.
And that it's okay if you're experiencing something to address it?
100%. Like again, 1 in 5 humans is going to be experiencing some aspect of a mental illness. And that doesn't mean forever, but like at that period in time. So we often think we're isolated and alone, like, oh, no one can ever feel like what I'm feeling. But likely someone's going to relate to you. It's normal.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do anything about it?
It gets worse. Yeah. So then we get more of the burnout, we get more of the stress, more of the depressive like symptoms. We feel less hopeful about life. And so we're trying to continue to keep finding that most optimal state again.
And vicarious trauma is obviously something I think that is rather common in this industry.
Yeah, so vicarious trauma is essentially with us in like a helping profession, whether you are in a social services field or even in like just a healthcare field, you can experience vicarious trauma or even just being a friend to somebody. So it's basically you are hearing about someone else's traumatic experience. And so us in a helping profession, right, we hear a lot of hard stories, scary stories, things that have significantly impacted a person. And then we then take on that trauma and then begin to experience negative symptoms associated with it. And so we get caught up because it's confusing because they're like, but it's not my trauma. So why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so tired? Why do I feel anxious or I'm having difficulty staying focused? And it can show up in such small ways, but that's what vicarious trauma is like that increasing burnout and you're not taking care of yourself. You're taking care of people too often. So we got to turn back inward. It's kind of like when they say the airplane, like put your mask on first before you help somebody else's mask. Same thing with mental well-being.
Yep. If you're not in a position to help others, right, then it's hard to do your job.
Yeah. Well, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of another person.
So mental health awareness here at Bays, the community-based services team is really every year does an amazing job of sharing a lot of tips and topics and conversations and just raising awareness about mental health and how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the activities that the team has led up this year?
We've been super excited for this year because we've had a lot of like new ideas about how to keep everybody engaged and fun, because last year we did a lot of psychoeducation, so sending out mass emails, but we wanted more engagement to hear from like our staff about like how do they take care of each other, because learning from each other is also a really helpful way to just to connect to and again, not feel alone, like, oh, I'm the only one experiencing this. So this year we're still doing our daily emails where we give some type of psychoeducation about this is what mental health means, or this is where you can learn more information, or just breaking down some of the difficulties of what mental well-being or mental illness can encompass. And then we have created like a group chat for our agency-wide, which has been fun to be able to actually connect with everybody. And our agency is pretty big, so that's fun. Everyone in all different programs has an opportunity to like answer questions. We were checking in about like, hey, how are you feeling today? Asking people to give book recommendations or podcast recommendations, sharing something that they love. So then people can almost be excited and invigorated about like, okay, well, like, oh, this is like the collective thought of like, we're all trying to like work on our mental well-being together, like that community feeling. We've also been doing meditation Mondays, where I've been leading a meditation for about 10 minutes. We're going to do that every Monday. So that's fun to get people excited into that practice. Today we actually had a presentation about burnout and stress and compassion fatigue by an outside resource. And so that was great to have available. We're going to have a panel of speakers coming up where we're just asking a various amount of experts about their experience in the system and with mental illness, and asking them various questions. So everyone in the agency has an opportunity to send their questions ahead of time to learn more. We're going to have a yoga segment. It's been fun.
And engaging too.
Very engaging. What do you think that's the most fun part about this year is that we're hearing a lot from the staff and getting their input and hearing it, just creating again like that community, that connection.
And so I feel like that's important for an organization like ours.
Yeah.
To offer an opportunity to rally around an important topic like mental health awareness.
Yeah.
But how does that build like camaraderie among the staff and that sense of belonging and fellowship, I guess?
Yeah, I think, again, we're in a helping profession. So our first thought, what I would say, is to always help our clients and help our staff. And help our staff. And our jobs are hard. And so our families that we serve, they're at risk, right? They are a high need population, and we love them, but they also can be exhausting. But so all of our energy and effort oftentimes goes towards them. And then there isn't a lot of time for us to check in with us, for us to check in with connection and community. There's a lot of benefit about being connected a mental, emotional level, and how that can impact your well-being. And so the thought with bringing everybody together is for them to actually have a moment of pause, like, no, we actually care, like, what is going on with you? Like, tell us what keeps you grounded. Tell us, or remind them of ways that can keep them grounded, because again, the collective first thought is like, I'm going to give all my energy to another person. So reminding them it's okay to turn inward. It's okay to take 10 minutes out of your day to go for a little walk in nature. It's okay for you to, turn off your phone for 10 minutes, being like, of course, make sure everyone's good and safe. And we're communicating. But I really think it's just, we care for our staff a lot, and letting them know that. And then it makes them feel more connected to the agency, themselves, their peers.
Yeah, and also sharing best practices, right? Like, I know in the chat, you all have asked some questions of staff, like, what do you do to take care of yourself? And really seeing that sharing of practices and tips amongst the staff has been really exciting for me to see.
100%. I even shared it yesterday that, like, you never know what is going to, like, be a light bulb moment for you. So being able to hear from multiple different people and different perspectives about, like, what landed for them or what works for them is going to be the most helpful. That's why we want to talk and be open about these conversations. Sometimes just hearing or, like, reading a book or reading a list of coping skills I should have, I'm like, but none of those connect to me. But then I hear one person says, oh, well, you know what? Reading a fantasy type of book really made me feel connected to this type of forgiveness, or this type of checking in with myself, or this is how I connect with people. And that landed for me. And I, maybe as a mental health professional, might not be like, go read a fantasy book. But this worked for somebody else. And that was their light bulb. Like, oh, I can understand and learn more from a different type of story. So it's good to get other people's perspectives, because there's not right or wrong. It's just what lands for you. That's what's going to stick.
And another thing I've learned is that we have a lot of fans of true crime drama in the organization as well.
Yeah, I am not one of them, but everybody in the agency apparently loves true crime. I mean, I do like a good documentary, but I think a little bit because we are addicted to some chaos and we get interested by human behavior. And so I think when I'm trying to connect it from a psychoanalytic perspective, I'm thinking that we just like to understand why humans human the way they do.
And from my perspective, I put a little thought into it, because the chat yesterday, I was like, wow, there's a lot of people that watch true crime series, that I think that in this profession, a lot of people are just naturally problem solvers as well. Yeah. And want to figure out, like, why did that happen?
Yeah, and they want to know the why behind the way that humans human, the way that their mind thinks, what drove their behavior, which is what we do every day. So true crime is just an extension of that.
So from your professional viewpoint, if somebody's struggling with mental health, or maybe not even at the point where it's causing unmanageability or, a great concern, but even just not feeling right, what's the best course of action?
My first course of action is just to, like, let them know you're not alone, because someone else is probably experiencing something similar. And so my biggest advice would be, like, can you find one person in your life that you feel safe with, and that you can then vocalize that to that person? Because oftentimes we have this storyline in our head that we are this negative story, like loop of I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy, or whatever the narrative is, that constant theme. And then we get so trapped by that mindset. And sometimes I do need another person to, like, be like, hey, that's not true. Right? And then how do I then keep working towards that? And then I'll maybe get exposed to skills, and I can Google, like, hey, how to feel better every day. Easiest way to do that, and try to work out of not easiest way, because it's hard. All of the work that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say is easy, but it's going to sound easy, but it's always hard. But building a gratitude practice is going to be foundational in your steps towards feeling better about yourself, and moving into, like, a more optimal state of being. Because when a gratitude practice comes in, you're telling yourself every day to think positively, and not positively of, like, the fake positivity of, like, oh, I just love my life and I love the flowers and I love my friends, right? Because that's not, sure, you might, but like there's no emotional connection to that when you just say it every day. So when I'm pausing every day to say, okay, what am I truly grateful for? I would encourage you to reflect back on the last 24 hours of your day. Can you think about 1 to 3 things that you could have been grateful for and why? Like, give me a why behind it, and then feel why, like let yourself feel that for a second. So say, for example, you just had a hurricane come through your town. And so every other house on the street lost power and like their houses were destroyed, but yours was solid and still standing and there's no damage. And you're like, gosh, I'm just so grateful for that I have a house today. Why? Because it's still standing and the hurricane didn't affect me and there's stability there, right? I feel that gratitude. But if I just, every day my house is good and I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, I'm grateful for my house. Yeah, sure. But like the impact isn't there yet. And so when I'm pausing to reflect on that, I'm teaching my brain to notice things that I'm grateful for. So bringing in that positive thought of more the grateful thought, I'll reframe that word. And so then I'm more apt as I go out throughout my day, as life progresses, that something bad might happen. But I'm like, okay, well, what out of this can make me feel a little bit grateful? So it's terrible that I had a hurricane, right? That's awful. And the community is devastated. And I can find a little gratitude that like I'm okay. And I know then I can maybe be helpful to other people, something along those lines. And so vocalizing, you need help though, to like know that like, hey, I'm in an irrational thinking pattern first. So asking for help, to go back to your first question, the first thing to do is can you find someone safe to talk to? And then can I work on just that reframing of my mindset? And that's going to be hard work. So the little thing that I can do is just do a gratitude practice.
I have a friend who says it's hard to be hateful when you're grateful.
Amen.
And that has taught me a lot for sure. And
yeah.
A lot of times for me, it's things that I take, like you were mentioning, things I take for granted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like just simple things that I almost have come to expect.
Correct.
But
it's habitual.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also changing that mindset, I would assume takes some level of vigilance and continuous practice. So maybe you do it for a little while and you start feeling better. Is it a good idea to just stop it?
No, we want to keep our practices. And we're specific about the word. We always will say practice, because you have, just like you're at soccer practice, you got to practice the technique over and over again to build the skill. Then eventually it'll become more of a comfortability of like your brain, you kind of train your brain to naturally think that way. But then life is going to throw something else at you that's going to be a stressor, or something's going to happen and that's going to be heavy. You got to reflect. And that's why we keep our practices as much as we can. We want to build them into more lifestyle, because this keeps me up. These keep filling up my cup, and all day long, my tank is going to keep getting empty and empty and empty. And these little practices keep me at bay.
So is it important to develop some kind of regular routine in terms of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of routine. So morning routine, night routine, and just not necessarily has to look the same thing every day, but what are things that are valuable to you that, again, bring you to the most optimal state of you? And then how can I fit it in my day? Doesn't mean you got to wake up at 5 a.m. every day and do a gratitude practice, do meditation, work out, and then, think about your thoughts and journal all the time. But maybe it is important to you that you do at some point move your body. It is important to you to have a moment to think about gratitude, maybe write it down, or even just say it out loud. Maybe that means journaling for you, maybe that means reading for you, but it doesn't have to look the same thing every day. Effort is the biggest thing that brings us to consistency. So we want consistent effort rather than perfect effort.
Yeah, and that's, I've had to learn that personally too, because I'm very rigid. And so, if I have 5 to 5:15 scheduled to do exercise or whatever it may be, and I wake up at 5:05, I'm like, oh, my whole day's ruined. My schedule is off now. So it's important to be flexible with that, right? And it doesn't have to be exactly the same every day. The important thing is that you have the practice every day.
100%. Because if you think about it too, right? We go out throughout our lives, and we're going to continue to experience different things every day. Life is going to life at us, right? a stressor is going to happen, something's going to happen to our family member, something's going to happen at work that's out of my control. And so my energy level and my mental capacity to handle all of those different variables is going to differ on a day-to-day basis. So for me to think every day I'm going to have the energy to be up at 5 a.m. and do all of this routine is just simply not feasible. That's great if you can sustain that for maybe a month and you're like, I feel great with this, but then something's going to happen and you're like, gosh, I need to sleep more. Like your body's craving you to rest and to pause, or like you need to really go attend to something else first, or that's going to mess up your routine if you're in that closed mindset of like it has to be a certain way. Rather like, okay, I only have 5 minutes today, truly, because everything else is blowing up in my life. What can you do in those 5 minutes? Maybe that's just gratitude that day. And that's what you do.
All right. Well, that's excellent information. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And in terms of community-based services,
yeah,
as I mentioned earlier, you're the Assistant Director of Operations for Community-Based Services. Is that correct?
We're going to change some title a little bit. So Regional Director of Community-Based Services.
Oh, okay.
So because we've expanded in behavioral health very big within Bays. So
well, that's a lot easier to say.
Yes. You had a lot of words for yours. But yeah, we do. I do operations. I'm the last one to
get the memo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So my role is a lot of implementation of behavioral health services across the state of Florida for Bays.
What are behavioral health services and community-based services?
So they are services that impact the community, that are accessible to at-risk youth and families that are in the community. So that means that they...
Do our clients have to go to a facility?
No. So we go to you. So we'll be in your home. We'll be in the...
meet you where you are?
Yeah, meet you where you are. If you want to go to a library, we go to a park, we'll go there. You want to come to our office, you can come there. But we'll also be in your home. So we're gonna make the service as accessible as possible.
So, and that helps reduce some barriers?
Oh yeah, because our families that we work with, they have transportation barriers, they have work scheduling conflicts, they have sometimes multiple providers that they're working with. And so that takes a lot of time and effort to then travel to other areas. I don't know if you've also traveled in Florida ever, anywhere. It's just traffic is insane. You could be in the car for hours.
What if you don't have a car?
Right. You don't have a car. You're on the bus then. And the bus, I mean, especially here in Hillsborough County, you could be on the bus for 5 hours just to make it somewhere you got to be there for 30 minutes. And so we're trying to remove as many barriers as possible that are within our control. And that means we come to you.
What kind of programs do we offer in community-based services?
So we have FFT, which is our functional family therapy program. And so we work with at-risk youth and families to help them, in the title, be more functional. So we're going to help you build a skill or a tool that's helping you reduce any type of dysfunction going on in the family. So maybe you have a youth in your family that's getting arrested a lot, or having a mental health crisis, or having difficulty running away, just some truancy issues. We're going to work and mitigate kind of what's going on, talk to you about what is your biggest stressor within your family, and then help you identify ways to handle that communication better, or again, just more functional. So we're not going to solve your problems. We want to make it easier for you to navigate life's ongoing issues throughout that. And then we have our BCC, which is our individual therapy component. So that's going to be in only one of our programs so far, but we're utilizing that service to support all of our base programs. So kids in our juvenile programs or in our behavioral health programs that maybe need a little bit more one-on-one care, we'll be doing individual therapy with them, more family therapy with them, and that's a very client-driven service. So what is that child in need of, that family member in need of, that parent in need of, and how can we support them alongside their other services? We have our STRIVE program, so that supports our child welfare population. So we help them with reunification, bringing the services in home for when the child is coming back to the family, helping stabilize and support and strengthen them together. We have our SNAP program, which is helping our younger youth, so kids in more elementary school that might be having some behavioral issues, and helping the parents and the youth really work together to build skills to support them. I think that's it.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, we're all across the state of Florida, and we're in multiple different counties, and we just keep growing and growing.
So when you say youth and family at risk of what?
at risk of getting what I will say further into the system. So we want to prevent any type of legal involvement with our families. And so that could be the juvenile system where the youth is getting arrested, or that could be the dependency system where child investigation is coming out and saying there's a concern for the children's safety or the parents' mental health, substance abuse issues or domestic violence. We really want to prevent any deepening into any type of system. We want to bring them back to a place where they can just be supported by community services that are voluntary.
So these services, if you're looking at an accident that occurred at the mouth of a river, right? Mm-hmm. You want to get more upstream.
Yeah, we want to get ahead.
Before the major incident occurs.
Yeah, we don't want the incident to occur. We want to help them prevent it from happening. So all of our interventions are going to utilize supportive methods. So that might be that they, still have difficulty in the family, but then they're able to adequately care for themselves and they can make family arrangements if they need to. They can problem solve the way that they need to without having to be with a higher level of intervention.
Do we connect them to additional resources if that is something that could be beneficial?
Yeah, within any clinical setting, you are connecting and preparing for discharge at intake. So we're always looking for additional resources that can support our family outside of just us, because we know it takes a village to help a community grow, to help a family grow. So we always want to connect as much as possible.
And BCC is a good example of that at Bay's Community Care, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I know, because it's been kind of frustrating to me, working in this industry for quite some time, the lack of capacity.
Yes.
In terms of adequate services, therapeutic interventions for adolescent children.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like there's enough available.
Correct.
And so children have to often wait for weeks or months before they can even be evaluated and then engage in any kind of intervention or treatment. So is BCC is the concept there that working with the population that Bay's already serves, that process could be streamlined to some degree?
Yeah, 100%. You explained it perfectly. So the BCC was kind of birthed from the need that our clients are in need of additional resources. They need that individual component of therapy. And when we refer to the community, oftentimes they're met with wait lists that are really long, or we don't hear back sometimes. And just because the community also is in need. And so we are trying to identify a way that we can support our clients to the highest level of degree. And so that we created the program of Bay's Community Care, so then we can then just bypass any wait list and just be an in-house provider of any of our programs of youth, families, adults that need additional care, and we're able to supply that to them.
And so my understanding, I'm no expert in this, you're the expert, but my understanding is that evidence and research indicate that quick engagement, especially with adolescents, the closer they are to the event that caused them to seek the assistance, the quicker you engage them in certain services, the more effective they are. Is there a correlation?
Oh, 100%. So engagement is something that you want to keep as a clinician from the minute that you are with them throughout treatment, because you want to keep it relevant to the conversation of like, well, why are you here? Why are you seeking services? Why is this important to you? And the longer time passes, so say an incident happens, then they're on a wait list for a month, it doesn't feel as heavy anymore. They're like, well, you know what? It's not as close as it was before. Like, I think I'm okay. And so they get into the mindset that they maybe don't need the service. So it happens with our family sometimes too. Like, it all feels big and like a crisis right now. So they're like, I need help, I need support. And then they have that natural fall off, the die down. It's like, you know what? Well, it's kind of status quo. We're back into the similar routine we've been in before, comfortable. It's still chaotic probably, but they know they're chaos. They understand how to work within it. And it's not crisis, still chaos, but it's fine. So we want to keep them understanding that it can be different and they can change. And so we can't do that though unless we're in it with them as quickly as possible.
You mentioned evidence-based practices.
I did, yes.
What exactly is that?
So an evidence-based practice is going to be like the clinical cornerstone of intervention. And so why we say that is because it's interventions that are backed by research and scientific data to prove its efficiency, it's effective. And so we like to really utilize those types of modalities when we're working with clients because we know that they work. So that's what we're going to look for when we're having interventions with our clients is is it evidence-based because is it supported? And so with that too, they're always growing and evolving. And so it's continuously being researched to prove that it's a helpful intervention to use.
So in evidence-based practice, though, there's an actual way to deliver that practice that has to be followed?
Yep. So the research is going to show you they do research to say, this is this type of intervention and this type of modality, and these are the steps to kind of get there. That's what it tells us. And so that's the most effective way to provide the service. There's going to be small intricacies where you as a clinician bring in your uniqueness, your individuality, but the foundation, the structure is what the evidence-based practice is.
And fidelity to the model, is that important?
Yes, fidelity is 100% important. Fidelity shows, are you doing what you say you're going to do?
And the way it should be done?
And the way that, it's the way it should be done, 100%.
So what population do we serve in community-based services?
So at risk. So it depends on the program about what specific age ranges that is, but it's typically any youth that is experiencing some type of hardship or difficulty going on in their community, in their home. So they could be attached to a juvenile program, they could be attached to child welfare, they could be attached to another mental health agency. So typically it's going to be families and ages of youth anywhere from 10 to 18. But we do have a younger group. Like I said, with our SNAP program, we have serviced the elementary school ages. But the youth are always under the age of 18.
And really with SNAP, talking about getting further upstream, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a direction that you see could be more beneficial, or not more beneficial, but that needs some additional providers of services doing some unique things?
Yeah, so are you speaking to like earlier intervention?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if I could have it my way, I would have elementary schools just be teaching mental health, mental wellness, and skills and tools as like a regular class, because then there wouldn't be maybe as need, because the kids would have the language, they'd have the understanding, they'd be taught skills on a daily basis, just like they're taught math, science, all the things. So that's, my big wish in life, but...
Well, and I think as an organization, BAYS is very interested in identifying gaps in services.
Yeah.
And also, like I mentioned earlier, getting as far upstream as possible. And yeah. I know on the delinquency side of things, the age of 14 to 16 is probably the highest population within the delinquency system.
Yeah.
So that would indicate to me that you have to do preventative services far before that, right?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So the age of 10 to 12 is probably a very ideal situation to be in.
Correct.
With the SNAP program.
Yep.
So the BAYS mission is to work with individuals, families, and communities to inspire change, growth, and success.
It is.
What does that mean to you?
I think it means, like, just what we're saying is trying to connect with our community in a way that can help them know, like, that there's an easier way to live, and that they're not alone in having to find that success in change, right? And so working within the concepts of what they define as success and change, I think is the biggest part of, like, knowing that they have the autonomy to decide what that looks like for them. And we're just here to be a support and a catalyst to help them access it.
And you mentioned one thing, that they can define that. And so we talk a lot internally about the clients really being the experts in their lives.
Yes.
And so how important is that from a clinical standpoint, or from the work that you do, that we really empower folks that are receiving services to understand that they have a great deal of input and control over what transpires over the next period of time.
I think it's incredibly important. So to remember, like, you are your own expert. The only person that knows what's best for you is you. You might not, though, have language to understand what is optimal and what is not optimal. And so based on your upbringing, your experiences, your environment, some things might be normative to you, but it might not feel good. You don't understand why. And so we're here to help you understand ways to work through that and understand, like, what is a more healthy way of living, what healthy way of communicating, but it's going to be what you want and how that looks like for you. So I can't sit here and say your life should look like this pretty little picture that I have, or the idealistic thought. I'm like, oh, I can see all of this change that you can work towards and your life can look like this. That just is the picture that maybe that I then want for my life. We always speak from our own experience. And so I have to remember that you're the expert. And so if all I can do is help you see that you're the expert and then help you identify these skills and tools, you're then going to figure it out for yourself about how to build that optimal life. But as a clinician, the detachment of it's not going to look the way that maybe I expect it to. It's got to always be with the client and what their accessibility is, what their environment says, what their feasibility is, what their dynamic of family looks like, and then how they understand it, what their culture says about it. And that's the most important thing, is empowering them to understand that they are the agent of change. The only way that their life is going to be different is if they make those decisions and choices. Just adopting to my decisions it won't stick, it won't land for them. So teaching them and showing them they're the expert is going to be the most beneficial.
What inspires you the most about working at an organization like Bays?
I just love that we continuously try to support our community, and we keep like a curiosity of like how we can continue to improve. Like, we're always moving with the times. We're always trying to check in about what's a more beneficial way to service them. We're always looking for more types of modalities that can engage the family. Like, I think what sets us apart from other agencies is that we're not a fixed mindset of, well, this is how we do things. We're always looking to grow and expand and thinking of the client first always.
Yeah, innovation is a big factor as well. And I think that's an important part of the work that we do.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, constantly trying to figure out how can we do it better?
Yeah.
How can we do it more efficiently? How can we do it in a way that's going to produce better outcomes for the clients?
Exactly.
All right, so we've got a few final questions for you.
I'm ready.
If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would that be?
Okay, so I thought about this, and my answer changes depending on what's happening in my head at the current moment in time. So this would be more of a personal thing.
This is a snapshot into what's happening right now.
What's happening in my brain.
Okay.
So I have recently, I personally have like a holistic, I talk about holistic approaches a lot to mental well-being. And so with that, meditation's big for me. And I've been exploring a lot more into that in recent months. And so a big leader in the meditation world is somebody named Joe Dispenza. He has workshops and he has podcasts, and a very interesting way of looking at mental health and even physical health. So I honestly would want to have dinner with him and just pick his brain, because it's very interesting, the success stories that he talks about with how using meditation as a catalyst to connection from within. Getting out of the mind, being more the controller, remaining more conscious about your life and your decisions. And so I just want to pick his brain.
All right. And what advice would you give your younger self?
Younger self would be, you don't have to do everything alone. So I am someone who has developed into a hyper independence. And so learning that it's okay to ask for help, learning it's okay to need help is something that I would want to be told from a much younger age.
It's hard trying to solve all the problems by yourself, isn't it?
It's certainly hard, and I've done it, but I didn't have to.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite thing about working in this industry?
I would just, again, goes to like impact. I love the ability, being a catalyst in someone's life, even if it's like I just planted a seed for them and helping them later on in life figure out, oh, like, oh, she said this to me maybe one day, or maybe I just planted a thought in someone that they can be more optimal and like change is available to them. Everyone has the ability to change. So impact for me is like what keeps me here, and allowing people to feel empowered makes me want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for everything that you do, and for being such a valuable member of our team.
Thank you.
And for being our first guest on the Inspiring Change podcast.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
It's been fun.
And hope you will come back and share some more knowledge with us.
I'd love to come back. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.